Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Helen Adam. I'm joined here with James Hayhurst to talk about tools for teachers and supporting children in separating families through schools. Um, my work is as formerly as a lawyer and more recently as a family mediator. I've been part of quite a large group in supporting James in developing an education pack for schools, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. James set up and runs the Parents Promise. He's going to say a little bit more about that in a minute. I'm going to start, if I may, with a quote from the president of the Family Division, Sir Andrew McFarlane. He said this: "If we had a blank sheet of paper and were designing a package of support for a child whose parents are separating, that child's school would, of course, play a fundamental role in that plan." He went on to say, by providing guidance and resources for teachers and parents alike, this Parents Promise initiative will make a real practical difference to the lives of children in the UK. So I'm going to hand over now to James to tell you about the Parents Promise initiative, who they are, why they set up, and what this education pack is. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Helen. And other Helen, is going to navigate the slides. So if we just go on to the next slide, Helen. So my background is not as worthy as most people here. My dad was a teacher and my mum's a nurse, so I'm from good stock, but I ended up going into advertising. So sorry about that. But it becomes relevant really in the approach we take to separation, which is that I experienced a separation over a decade ago, and I realise that the way we talk about separation in society isn't very healthy, and there's huge issues. I don't need to tell you on this webinar what those are, but it's very gender politicised, and we don't actually seem to get to the root of the issues, or kind of really the children get caught in the middle. So we've started to think, oh, can we do something around this? So just go on to the next slide. How do you solve? It's a big problem. It's a lifelong mission, which Helen and a few others have joined me on. How do we solve a problem like separation? And if we go to the next slide, it was really just thinking about, as I said, there were a couple of things. There's this real toxicity. I never thought I was going to separate. I had my own prejudices. I'm not from a separated family. You never think you're going to separate, and you never think it might, if you do, that there might be issues, and you'll struggle to see a child. And there just seemed to be, as I said, both this toxicity, but also a blind spot about the damage that is done to children. And we don't even see it in society. So you may think, well, why's he got a picture of Mrs. Doubtfire on the slide? Well, it's things like that, which, the backstory or the main story of that is there's a dad, that can't see his kids, so is dressed up as a housemaid in order that he can. And we think that's funny, and which is funny, of course, but it happens in real life. And as a society, we've not really caught up, I don't think, and realized that bad separation is really damaging. And maybe we watch other programs from the 80s and 90s and they don't age well. We've yet to catch up, I think, when it comes to separation. So that's a bit of the background. Next slide, please. So what we wanted to do with our various work is to be more positive, so to talk about the issue, but in a positive way, and to collaborate. So as part of the Parents Promise initiative, there are probably 20 or so organisations that have come together in the centre ground to do some stuff which is around for the benefit of children. Place to Be are probably one of the ones we're most proud of, and you all know what they do. So really child-focused organisations. And there's three things we've done. I'm going to quickly go through the first two before we go on to the third, which is the education initiative. So just flip onto the next slide, Helen. The Parents Promise, so quick plug to the Parents Promise. I hope to see the website traffic spike after this. So if you type in the Parents Promise, you'll see a lot of our work. And the Parents Promise itself, the idea we had was, do you know what? If you're rich, it's possible to sort of prenup material possessions, but nobody ever talks about separation in a meaningful way, because obviously we don't think we're going to separate. And it just felt like a mass experiment of cognitive dissonance, because we know that 40-50% of partnerships may end, but everyone thinks they won't. So we thought, let's raise the issue, let's talk about this, and let's create something to get parents to think about separation. So if we go into the next slide. Next slide as well. There's some of the people that are part of a group. This was the stat. We like to launch with some stats. There'll be some more about the education initiative shortly. So we discovered on launch, this is 2021 now, pretty much 90% of us parents had actually thought what we'll do if we win the lottery. With probably we probably seriously planned it. And sadly, it's never going to happen, or it's very rare. But only 5% of the parents had ever talked about what they'll do if they split up. So we created something called the Parents' Promise, which should be on the next slide. There we are, which is a commitment that we want parents to make, not in front of the children, but when they're together, just to say, look, hopefully this will never happen. Somewhere between a prenup and a will. But sadly, we all need wills, but it's good to do. If anything happens, we're going to promise these really simple things that, you're going to have lots of access to both of us. We're going to love you and keep you safe. And we're going to work together in partnership to create the conditions for you to thrive. There's no point in not speaking to each other and doing anything on texts, and pretending it's all fine. Children need our input. So that's the start point. I'll give you an intro into our approach for the education initiative. So we launched that, and what we're trying to do in culture is make a real difference where we can in a number of areas. And the first, if you just go on to the next slide, Helen, we like to misappropriate Mark Zuckerberg here. We want to move fast, relatively fast for an organization with no money doing it part-time, and make things hopefully that make a positive difference to society. So the first thing we did in 2023 was in the world of work. If we go on to the next slide, which was to look at the fact that there's a lot of blind spots here. There's a blind spot with HR policy. So we've discovered that 95% of employees said that separation affected their mental health in their workplace, but less than 10% had any sort of separation policy. So we set out to change that, and we created a simple policy. It was a very easy ask, a bit like the schools initiative was, because HR leaders said, oh, wow, like we really should be doing this. And it's simple stuff you're asking for. Let's recognize the quite large number of our workforce that are separating and give them some tools and support. So next slide, Helen. No, that was me in a suit, happens occasionally. That was me, Sir Andrew McFarlane, who's just about to step down. So he's the main man. He's the head of the family courts, and Siobhan Bailey, MP. So we launched that 26th of the 1st, 2023. Then we move on to why you're all here, which is what we've done in the area of education. So if you just go on to the next slide. Here we are back at Parliament. So I'm slightly older, but worse hair and more grey. So this was us later last year. This was the launch of the Education Initiative in Parliament in September. You got Rupert Hook sponsored us there, and then we have a number of we have a couple of MPs. We have Ben Hine, who's a professor specialising in this place. We have and then we have the COO of the church schools at the back, Nigel Genders. So we launched an initiative in the area of schools. It probably won't be a surprise to you why we did this, but we're going to tell you a little bit more about why we did this and some of the survey results. So we've just gone to the next slide. So here are some of the survey results, but let me talk first about why we felt we needed to do this, and it'd be really interesting to hear your comments and input and questions afterwards. Is a bit like the HR initiative, the group had, through either first or second-hand experience, realised or had a hypothesis that schools was probably an area that we could help. Our hypothesis going in was that a lot of the parental conflict or issues that happen at the home or around a separation probably get carried to school. We'd sort of seen that in various guises. I remember this from my dad being a teacher. We know teachers are incredibly busy doing really important things like teaching children. So we suspected this was an additional pressure they didn't need, that it would be very stressful, and that they probably weren't tooled up in terms of what the law says. And it may be possible for one parent to try and sort of, whisper in the ear of a teacher, and before you know it, you've made a mistake because you didn't really understand the legal background, etc. And most importantly, we suspected that if this was happening, it's going to be to the detriment of children. Children separations are obviously traumatic in various forms, and our mission is to make them as amicable as possible. And even if they can't be amicable at home or in their homes, really school should be a safe place. And we talked to lots of through some of our organisations, kind of grown-up children who told us about the great stories when school was the safe place, and then the flip side when actually school became another area where they couldn't escape this kind of trauma at home. So what we looked at was we surveyed about 10,000 teachers through TeacherTapp, which some of you may be aware of. So we managed to get a few questions on that survey platform. So what we found out from the top, and these are some of our Instagram graphics from launch, but clearly that essentially this was an issue for teachers. And at the top level, I think on the left-hand side, this is quite a frightening statistic. So 61% of the teachers that we surveyed, so a large number, said that they'd experienced one teacher trying to exclude the other from school communication. We also discovered that that there'd been, I think about 58% of teachers said that school often became either a location for or source of conflict, whether it was about the schooling or about who was picking the child up or any sorts of things, even surnames, if we're getting really down to the minutiae. So lots of issues. We also discovered that, as the second stat in that tile shows, teachers weren't trained. So I think we discovered that less than sort of just over 10% had any training in terms of the rights and needs of a child during separation, and only 5% had any understanding of the legality of what actually does the law say, what does family law say around separation. So that was clearly an issue. So 6%, if we look at the other side, had any training on the children's legal rights and needs in the context of family situation. In terms of how it affects teachers, or again, the kind of behaviour they saw, so 37% reporting that sometimes it was just so high conflict that teachers were sort of in the way, in the middle, in terms of some sort of stressful mediation role, which they didn't want. And then probably most importantly, towards the end, 97% of teachers said they'd seen separation affecting children's mental health. And 79% had said they'd seen it affecting academic performance and attendance. So, you can see really that's why we're here today, the issues that follow. I think there's some more stats on the next slide, Helen, as well. Yeah, so here we go. So 94%, so 3% out, said seen separation affect the mental health of children. Yes, as I said before, so 58% seen the school becoming a source of or location for conflict, which I think is a really, really sad statistic to read. Yeah, and then just the issue again about a lack of training. So the overall picture, which probably won't be a surprise to any of you, just to recap, is conflict issues, parental separation is affecting the school. It's coming into the school gates. It's stressful for teachers, and it's something that you shouldn't have to deal with. Really, we need our parents to grow up, for want of a better word. We need to keep the school as a safe space. There didn't seem to be the training, and Helen's going to come on to some of the materials that we've produced. There didn't seem to be the easy access to training, which would help teachers create better boundaries, in a sense, to stop themselves getting into situations that they find themselves in because they don't know the law. It's not their fault. We wanted to tool teachers up. And ultimately, this is all about, as I say, making sure that school is this safe place, so that our little people can, or not so little people can thrive. So that's what we discovered. Anything I've missed, Helen?
No. I suppose the one thing that would be helpful for people to know is just the sheer numbers of teachers that were able to respond to these surveys.
Yeah.
This wasn't 50 people. Do you want to just say something about numbers?
So we got with TeacherTapp, which probably some of you use, we got between 8 and 10,500 teachers responding to each. So this is pretty significant and robust data.
Yeah. So these stats are really very important in telling a story of what's going on and what teachers are experiencing. Yeah. Thank you, James. We're going to come back to you in a little while.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back to
talk about another bit. I'm going to just take you through now what the materials are. Here are images of two of them: parental separation, your child in school. That on the left, that is the guide for parents. Small, but lots of good links. And we could have written 100 pages in there. It was really hard to keep it into an accessible. Poor James had to.
We started off at 100 pages, didn't we? Yeah.
Exactly. James had to keep coming back saying, no, cut it out, too long. Enormous and fantastic help from Bob Gregg and Rebecca Giroux and Anne Harad from Only Mums and Dads as well, just in bringing sense to it. But we've created a really concise, helpful, a really accessible guide for parents. Then on your right, that's a chunkier document, and that is the guide, separation guide for schools. And I'm going to say a little bit more about that in a minute. There's also, just stay on that slide for a moment, Helena. There's a resource pack for primary schools, which has got loads of great links and books and my brain's gone mad. What's the thing? The PSHE classes.
Yeah, training. Yeah, exactly. Teaching guide. Yeah,
lots of that. And then there's also a resource pack for secondary schools, and with obviously more detail around links and stuff and things that they can share with young people. I'm going to spend the next few minutes, though, talking about one of the critical documents that we produced, which is the school separation policy template. So if you want to move on to the next load of slides, that's the thank you from James. This is then my bit. Those are the 5 resources available. They're all available, by the way, as a download on the Parents Promise website. We've got a QR code later on the slides for anybody who just wants to go straight there. Otherwise, put Parents Promise Education Pack into Google and you will get straight there. Next slide. So the school separation policy became a really critical document because much of the feedback was basically about the chaos of separation sort of rippling through into school communities, sometimes hard for teachers, class teachers, school management, sometimes hard at the school gate, sometimes hard for other parents. Obviously difficult for children when issues are being unmanaged and spilling out into how things are going on at school. So that was one of the things, is to kind of give schools a kind of clear resource that says, hello, when we enroll a child who registers with separated parents with different address, here's our policy. This is how we roll. It sets a framework. There's clear boundaries. So, that was one reason. But another important reason is that some really unhealthy dynamics can evolve through schools, through a school not necessarily being clear on what boundaries they need to put in place, and one parent potentially manipulating a school to their advantage, to be, in a sense, in their camp, and with the other parent being marginalized. There was a huge amount of feedback in this whole area about a parent feeling marginalized, and actually deeply hurtful and upsetting experiences were shared from parents who literally had been just sort of brushed out of their child's school existence. And it wasn't through any wrongdoing as such or by the school. It was through not having a clear framework in place. So for lots of reasons, we thought it'd be helpful to suggest to schools a template separation policy. And obviously, this is just a template for them to consider with their board of governors, review, amend, adapt into what they're comfortable with. The other important thing to say about this separation policy, it's not a legal contract. If a detailed policy would need clear legal advice by the school and would run to many pages. This was a one-pager. It is literally on one page like this, printed it out on an A5 flyer, and written in language that parents understand. And as much as anything, this is about a school sharing information with parents that they read and think, okay, all right, that's the deal. That's how this is going to roll then. We understand. So it sets a kind of leadership framework in language that parents can take in. So I'm going to just take you through what that separation policy is. If any of you on the call have questions about it or comments, would love to hear from you. Please do use the Q&A. But my focus is to take you through this now. But just as we go on to the next slide, I'm going to just read out a few quotes that are included within the Parents Promise materials. This is from William, who is now 24. When my parents separated, it was such a difficult time for me. The conflicts seemed to be everywhere, school included. There was no safe space, and I felt I had no one to turn to. that was his experience. If his school had had a clear separation policy in place, we hope that the Williams of today would be having a different experience. Similarly, this is Aaron, age 15. At the start, I liked being at school because it took my mind off everything that was going on at home. But then it got harder to pretend everything was okay. I wish someone at school had helped me just by little things, just asking how I was or giving me a chance to talk about things. The school, I think, as the president, and the quote I gave to the president right at the beginning, has such an important role to play in being that calm, safe, stable environment for children when there's a lot of transition and difficulties in their home environments. So the first intro to our template policy is this. At school name, our focus is and always will be the well-being of the child. Really powerful statement right at the beginning that this is about children. We understand that family separation can be difficult for everyone involved, especially children. Our aim is to support all children, not parents, all children in a fair, balanced and compassionate way. And that includes working respectfully with both parents. My apologies for the typo there. Next slide. So the first then subsection is how we support children. We'll offer consistent care and understanding to help children feel secure during changes at home. Staff will be sensitive to their emotional needs and available to listen and respond appropriately. I think that's what Aaron was looking for in his quote there. There was no one he could go and talk to. And the school will keep school routines stable and predictable, which is often helpful for children. By the way, I should make it clear that on these slides, I've paraphrased what it says because I didn't want to fill the slides with words, but the full words are all there available on the Parents' Promise as a download. But this is paraphrasing what it says. I'm going to quote from Jamala, age 9 at this point, in reference to staff will be available to listen and respond appropriately. This is Jamala, age 9's experience. My teacher was really nice. She asked me how I was and said I could talk to her anytime. I felt better because she was there for me and she wasn't really stressed about it all. She was really nice to my mum and dad too. Teachers have such an important role to play. Okay, so that's the first thing, how we support children. Then more detail is our approach with parents. Next slide, please. So we will treat all parents with parental responsibility equally, unless a court order says otherwise. We will ensure all parents with parental responsibility are included in school communications. Now that one statement is huge. That brings into the school engagement all those parents would otherwise just be airbrushed out. So we will ensure all parents with parental responsibility are included in school communications. All parents with PR will be informed of their child's progress, behaviour, or any concerns, or be involved and volunteer for school trips. It's another area which is where parents can be missed out. We will encourage both parents to communicate with each other about school meetings and attend together if possible. Obviously, it won't be possible in some cases, but there's a default position that it would be good to attend together if possible. Otherwise, separate meetings can be arranged if needed. I know that's difficult for some schools to arrange, but we've put it in there in the template for them to review. We will not take sides in any dispute. Our role is to remain neutral and focused on the best interests of the child. We will handle information sensitively and only share with staff who need to know. And we will provide a consistent point of contact at school to avoid confusion and ensure clear communications. Moving on, what we ask from parents. Please ensure we have contact details for both parents with parental responsibility. Keep us informed of changes to living arrangements or family circumstances which may affect your child. This is really important at this point. Let us know of any court orders in place which affect parental responsibility, communications, or collection from school. Please provide a sealed copy, and obviously the parents may need to check if the court permission is needed first. But this is obviously to ensure where there are safeguarding concerns, the school is fully aware, kept up to date, and not just trotting out the joint parental responsibility engagement with everybody in situations where there have been court orders and safeguarding issues. Please avoid using school as a channel for disputes. We're here to support your child, not mediate between parents. The number of respondents from schools who said they ended up being a go-between between parents who refused to communicate. So this is putting a clear boundary in place that is not the role of the school. Poor, class teachers who are negotiating pickup times and goodness knows what, because parents couldn't communicate and it was all coming through via the class teacher. Please work with us to maintain consistency and stability for your child between home and school. Again, that is entering into a partnership. We want to work together. We want this process of transition for the child's life to not be disruptive for the child, and to maintain consistency and stability, whether between home or school. We in Kent, at our local family mediation service in Kent, I'm part of a partnership in Tunbridge Wells. We hosted an afternoon workshop for local schools to go through these materials, and the teachers who attended were just lapping up these statements and said, we would love to have these clear principles in place and agreed with parents at the outset, because without a framework, we are tossed here and there. We don't have training, and the troubles come in, and we don't know how much to get involved. We don't, it becomes really difficult. So to have a clear set of boundaries, a framework which sets out a child-focused role that the school will play on behalf of children, working in partnership with parents, they were just thrilled to see it. So it then moves on to concluding words. We are committed to fostering an inclusive and respectful environment for all families. If you have any concerns or would like to discuss anything in confidence, please contact the school office or speak to a member of the leadership team. So that is the separation policy. As I said, love to hear any views or comments or questions in the chat. Another quote from Imogen, now 22. School was a refuge for me during that time of life. I could escape the problems at home, and I had a wonderful form tutor I could confide in and share my worries. The school, as we say, can play such a valuable role. So the materials are all available through the website. And Helen, do you want to just share the QR code, which is on the next slide? I don't know if people have got phones or whether this is just confusing, but that will take you straight to the website.
Ooh. I'm going to give it a go.
Can I say, I'm not very good at tech, but I do know how to turn a web link into a QR code, which some people think is just magic, but is actually very simple.
There we are, all works.
Okay, great. So I just want to say a tiny few words about the guide for schools. I'm not going to go through it in a way that I've gone through the separation policy, but the guide for schools is quite a few pages long, and I'm just going to flag the headline so you get a feel for what it is. Please download and have a look. The first section is all about why parental separation matters in our school, and this resource is designed to help. It's got loads of statistics, it's got lots of lovely quotes from young people, and it's beautifully laid out. So this resource is designed to help. Now then it goes into different sections. First section is about emotional and key knowledge and checklist around what's going on in the emotional front for children, and how schools can be aware of it and how they can help. Next section, practical, key knowledge, checklist. And then the next section is about language. And as I often talk about the harmful language of family separation, there was a table in there saying, instead of this word, think this and why it matters. So, for instance, instead of non-resident parent, think child's name lives mostly with, quote, mum, dad or grandparents, and then why it matters. It's confusing and exclusionary language. Some people assume on first encountering the phrase that implies the parent referred to does not live in the UK. Just lots of different practical things around language. Then there's a really good concise bit on the law, which explains about parental responsibility. And then we've got 2 pages of checklist, which is what happens in this situation you've got this situation example, one parent excluding the other from school events. And then the checklist then goes through a set of things to think about and to ask about. So it's really, really practical. There's also in here, in my view, a critical bit, I was speaking on it this morning, is a section on the rights of the child to be heard, the voice of the child, and Article 12 of the UNCRC. If schools are able to tell young people that they have a right to be consulted when decisions are being made which affect them, that is going to be really important in young people being aware of their rights. As ever, it's a question of getting the word out. So the school policy then ends with the last section, which is called 5 to Thrive. And James is going to tell us a little bit about what that is. Helen, could you skip the next slide and go on to the 5 to Thrive principles? I'm just going to ask James just to talk a little bit about that and how that came around.
Thank you, Helen. And just a couple of things to throw in before I go on the 5 slides that I just think worth kind of reiterating is one's micro and one's macro. Yeah, the admin, the kind of keeping parents on lists, it's often just forgotten. It's not done deliberately. It's just something it's very easy to do. And obviously, if you're not around and you don't maybe live in the same town as your child, once you're off a list, you don't know what you're not seeing. So it's one of those things that's kind of you kind of want people to double check or to have a system where it's just in at the start and then it can't fall off because kind of often it does. Um, and then at the very top, I think Helen's alluded to this in terms of boundaries. It's at a kind of macro societal level. What this we hope this does also, if schools are able to set out, look, this is what happens when you separate. It happens, there's no shame attached. But for the children to thrive at St Mary's, we know this is the best way, the best conditions, and the best rules which will enable your son or daughter to thrive. We think it'll be so important in influencing parental behavior because when things do go awry, and they do, and there's sort of, nonsense that occurs in the home that just shouldn't, people are respectful, I hope, mainly of schools and their rules, and they want their children to do well. So we're hopeful that it really drives behavior as well, and it stops some of the stuff. So it's sort of it puts people off some of this behavior and just so that it's kind of not acceptable. So yeah, the 5 to Thrive. So this comes from a very wise man, which Helen has already mentioned, name checked, Bob Greig from Only Mums and Dads, a wonderful man. He always has wise insights as we're towards the end of a project. And we'd created some stuff and we shortened it and it's designed nicely and we were happy with it. But we really wanted something which was immediate for parents and teachers so they could understand, like, oh, there's all this stuff happening. But what can I do practically in the first 6 months? How do I know that the child is okay? And what can I do in a way? It's something that's manageable. And what should I watch out for? So I'll go reverse up. The things to watch out for, which we find from all sorts of professionals in this sector, that can be affected, and there's signals that the child is not in a good place. Is the child still doing the extracurricular sports and hobbies that they used to do? We hope that's a yes. If they're not, that's worth an investigation, or let's be sensitive to that. Are they still in the same friendship groups? Again, that's something. If they are, then that's great. If there's fracturing, that's something we want to be aware of. As we've said before, this is for schools. Schoolwork and attendance is important. And it's also, again, if it's not happening, it's a symptom that things are wrong. So how is, I know you all track attendance in apps now because I get updates all the time. How is attendance and how is the schoolwork progressing? Mental health, one of the things we called for is to have a lead at school. There's much more sort of pastoral care than 100 years ago when I was at school, but having an outlet that a child can feel that they can talk to the teacher. We heard some of those wonderful stories, didn't we, that Helen said the difference a teacher can make is huge. So they're all sort of things to watch out for, things to put in place. And the top one is really how to improve the whole thing. Is this holistic communication strategy between the school, both parents and the child, that things are joined up? Because if we agree what good looks like and we're consistently communicating in a clear way, it's going to make a real difference. So they were the 5 to Thrive, and they were on the handouts. This is the handout from Parliament. I've got little logos, but this is the thing we had at Parliament. So yeah, five hopefully quite simple things that people can remember and we can actually focus, as Helen said many times, this is about the children and how can we focus on them.
Thank you, James. And then Helen, if you go back one slide before, then this is sort of stepping back into the kind of macro. What are the overarching 5 changes that we would want to see in this education space? First, obviously, for parents to keep school as an important safe space for children and not bring their disagreements into school. Second, for all schools to have a clearly communicated separation policy in place. As I said earlier, you know, the ideal is when a child is registering, if they register with separated at different addresses, here's our separated policy. If a child's parents separate while the child is at school, then, oh, by the way, here's our separation policy, as a matter of course, not waiting until things unravel. But, you know, this is just what we provide to all parents of children in different homes. Education professionals do need to have some level of training and resources to understand children's rights and needs in the context of separation in school. We feel wary about putting a burden on teachers who already have to carry so much, and you know, always increasing demands on checking this and being aware of that. But also the feedback we had is that actually this material is quite liberating for teachers because they're dealing with a mess at the moment. Not all families, because lots and lots of families manage separation brilliantly well and there's no issues at all. But for the families where it is difficult, schools have got no resources or training or anything. So actually the kind of feedback we had is that this isn't a burden. We're not asking them to take responsibility for the full child's total pastoral welfare throughout the whole of the separation, but to have clear systems in place. And of course, when clear boundaries are in place, everybody knows where they stand and it works better. So the training and resources was meant to be empowering and not a burden. Love questions about that from anyone here on the call who's representing teachers. Schools to have a nominated safeguarding lead, as they do in any event for child protection, but also that safeguarding lead to be fully aware of the dynamics of family separation and some of the issues to watch out for, exactly like the 5 to Thrive points that James just highlighted just then, so that children could best be supported through any separation. So that's a specific awareness about the dynamics of separation and the impact on children. And yeah, parents and school to embrace the 5 to Thrive principles. So we were going to have at this point a fabulous lady who's a very senior in the senior leadership team of a large school in the Northeast. She has been unable to attend for very, very understandable reasons. So we don't have the school input. If there are those on the call that would like to add comments or anything in the chat, we would love to hear that. Helen Anthony is reviewing the chat and can feed in any thoughts. But just before we do that, I wanted to say a tiny few words about the role of mediators in all of this. We in Kent, as I say, hosted just an afternoon workshop. We did have some really nice sandwiches as well for local teachers. It went really well. One teacher said that this had been the best training event that she'd been to in ages. And all we did was present the Parents' Promise materials. She was going away, she was part of a leadership team, and she was going to go away with the school separation policy and talk about it with the leadership team at their school. But you know, they were hungry for this information, and as mediators, it's a really great opportunity to reach out to local schools, either to host a webinar or an afternoons or a half day something where people can come in person, or otherwise just go and meet them. It's a great opportunity also to talk about child inclusive mediation, because sometimes we need schools to be the safe place where children can be consulted, and that's also another lovely opportunity to talk about it. So these resources that James and the team have put together are a wonderful opportunity, really, for us to be out there in our community and promoting really positive messages about managing family separation well in all its forms. And within the conversation, obviously, there can be discussions around NCDR and about all the great people locally that are working really constructively to support parents to resolve things safely and well. So if you're on the call as a mediator, I would encourage you to look at these resources and think about whether it's worth reaching out to schools in your area. Thank you. Okay, Helen. Any questions or comments?
We do have some questions and comments. Thank you. So, the first one is actually from somebody who's saying they're actively involved in schools and school trusts. And could you please confirm that they are free to take these resources with them so they can present them? So I think that's a very firm yes.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Please do take these and share these as widely as you can. The next question is, do you have any feedback from schools on sort of you were talking, Helen, I think, about burden versus supporting people. Do you have any feedback from schools about the value that the teachers, have found in terms of these materials? It's saved them time. Have they seen difference in the way that they've interacted with parents, in the difference for the children?
James?
Sure, I go. Yeah, I mean, the short answer is we haven't been in field enough to know, but we can tell you a few things. So when we created materials, we consulted with a number of schools, groups. We did some work with a Girls' Day School Trust and all their pastoral leads. And it was a bit like when we're talking to the head of HR at Tesco, they're just like, this is so needed. And this comes up all the time. And we're really grateful to them. So they help shape the resources. And we've seen there's been a lot of downloads. So we hope that's good. We would love some feedback in time, to see how it is working. I think the only thing I can sort of say anecdotally, it's kind of the point Helen made, is really we know from sort of first and second hand experience and conversations with people is that some of the issues, and you saw that in the stats, teachers will be told something, and because they don't know how family law works and it's not their fault, it ends up causing them more work. So the toolkit is very simple, and generally, unless there's a court order that says something, what court orders or not, or kind of will generally say it's pretty standard. So you can kind of tool yourself up and go, it's unlikely that this parent can't pick the child up. Now, if there's a court order saying they're a risk and there's the safety concerns, it will. But generally, a lot of the stuff, we saw the 60% trying to prevent pickups. A lot of that stuff should disappear with some pretty simple training. But Helen, you're a bit more expert in this area than me.
Well, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I think there's an enormous confusion about what the law says. The separation in your school resource has got just really simple explanation of some of the legal principles that are easy to misunderstand. It was put together by Amanda Bell of Separate Space, and in fact, the book that Amanda Bell has produced at Separate Space is also recommended about supporting children through family separation. So, there's some really simple, accessible legal information. Now, obviously, in a really high conflict matter, raising complex issues with orders flying around and goodness knows what, the school may need to consult their own lawyers about this. We can't provide the answer for everyone. This is the kind of overarching framework that works for most families. But, where there are child protection concerns, serious safeguarding concerns, the school may need their own independent legal advice. It can't rely on, a generic document from us. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think the question was really about the impact the resources had, and I think what I'm hearing is that you found out that it's very much needed. Haven't yet had the opportunity to see the impact because we haven't had, it's not been around for too long. So
exactly.
It needs to get out there.
Yeah, but there are lots of mediators who are posting questions or comments in the chat to say how valuable they think this will be, and how keen they are to get this out.
And on the data, so Dr. Ben Hine, who was in the front, the tall guy, he from the University of West England, he is going to be tracking. So we're looking at downloads. So he's very keen that we start to see the impact that we're having. So hopefully, in a year or two's time, we'll start to be able to report that.
That's great.
They were only launched in September.
Yeah.
So we're in the really early days, really. So as you say, the need is there. How helpful it is, we'll have to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question is from somebody within a school, saying about well, if you are going to be signposting to mediation or to out, a school, so trying to help parents resolve conflict, but not doing it yourself as teachers. But you know that your families won't be able to afford very much in terms of doing that. How much does mediation cost? What are the options for families where they don't have very much money?
Well, Helen, you're in as good a place to answer that as me. But basically, if a family is eligible for legal aid, then mediation is free for the person who's eligible, and the first session is free for the other person as well, even if they're not eligible. There's also a mediation voucher from the government, which is non-means tested, of £500 for any mediation in which issues around children are discussed. So there is some financial support out there. But for difficult cases which aren't easily resolved by a single session or 1 or 2 sessions, mediation is expensive and it may be difficult to afford further help. I want to mention a couple of other options. We have, on the Family Solutions Group, we've recently launched the Separated Parenting Programme Directory, where any parent can go online and choose a separated parent programme. Now, some of them are on a charging basis, but quite a number of them are free. And, you know, a parent will learn a huge amount about how they're dealing with conflict, how they're dealing with communication, how to manage their feelings about their ex, and how to prioritize their child's needs through attending any of those programs. So those are free. We're doing a lot of work with family hubs at the moment to try and make sure access to support for separated families is available through family hubs, and resourcing early help teams in children's services and through family hubs in understanding this kind of material. They don't have any training at all in understanding the options for resolving issues away from court. The only training they have is to direct people to court. So there's a lot of work going on in what we call the out of court space, in trying to create resources and services that are accessible and that will help people resolve things well and in a child inclusive way. We're not there yet, and Helen Anthony is doing a phenomenal work in trying to promote access to legal aid for mediation for all families who need it, but it's been quite a task.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, the legal aid is available at the moment. The issue we've got is about the number of mediators, but do look on the Family Mediation Council website and search for a mediator who offers legal aid. You should be able to find one in that way if you need them. Thank you, Helen. We've got another question from somebody who works in the school as a learning support assistant, who says recently, unfortunately, she's been supporting many children experiencing separation. Do you have any material for the children too, so that they can understand separation in a family-friendly way, well, in a friendly way from a children's perspective?
There's, I don't know if you can see, this is Supporting Children Resource Pack for primary schools, and the other one is resource, how do I get it? Here we are, Supporting Children, a resource pack for secondary schools. So they've got stuffed full of links, of books, of links. Something I'll mention is, 2 things to mention, is a new online bot that was launched just early this month by Amicable and Restored Lives. So it is, instead of young people turning to Google, and goodness knows what they find, potentially quite harmful content, or ChatGPT, this is a dedicated AI bot, which is informed by a huge amount of data, which is safe, and where a young person can put in any question and get answers in a safe context. It's called Split Happens. I will send Helen Anthony the details so that it can go on the FMC website as one of the links that you can follow. The other thing is that there are online workshops that run for young people aged 12 to 18 and then 19 to 30 by an organisation called Your Direction. They are very carefully facilitated, and they are a brilliant space for young people to just talk with their peers, not in a space with parents or grown-ups or others other than the facilitators, but talk with their peers about what's going on, what's helpful, what's not. And the Your Direction workshops go through certain key themes. It runs over 5 weeks on I think a Wednesday evening. But that's, again, yourdirection.org.uk. I'll put the link in I'll send the link to Helen to add to the FMC website.
Thank you, Helen. Right, the next question comes from a mediator. So, do you have any advice on how to approach a school as a child inclusive mediator?
This is a great set of resources to use to approach any school. But also, I think lots of people don't really understand what child inclusive mediation is. I don't know about others on the call, but I've had quite a number of child inclusive cases where, for very understandable reasons, the child has been consulted at school. And I know some mediators have gone to schools to do that. Beverly quite often does that. Beverly says, in my case, I have done them online where the child has been at school in a private room and with a family support worker. So the school has a really valuable role to play. In terms of reaching out, I think most schools would be probably quite interested to hear about these resources and about the way in which child inclusive mediation is just a really important part of the whole family separation piece. And schools, need to be aware of that. But certainly the schools that have been supportive in the cases I've had have just been really, really helpful. It couldn't have been more helpful in offering a space and offering a support worker to sit with a child. And, they've been fantastic. So I've never experienced any pushback from a school. Can I just say one other thing, which is not in response to a question, but it's something totally perhaps different, but I wanted to mention because Karen alerted us to it this morning. Karen Barham has alerted us to the fact that there's peer mediation training going on in London from the 21st to the 23rd of April to train the trainers for peer mediation schemes. And again, I'll send you the link, Helen. It's being run by Ben Harper at the Peace Building in Schools coordinator. So that is if we can train our young people in schools to resolve arguments when they're children or when they're young people, my word, just imagine what a different society we'll live in. So peer mediation in schools is a really fantastic thing, and I'll share those details with you afterwards if that's all right.
Thank you. And our friends at the Civil Mediation Council have been working on the Peer Mediation Network. So there's lots of information about peer mediation on the Civil Mediation Council website as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.
We've got one last question, which is about how can we find a local family hub? I believe that there's a search facility for local family hubs, and I will look that up and I will try and put that onto the FMC website as well for everybody.
But also go to your local authority. Your local authority will be able to tell you where the family hubs are in your area. It's fair to say that although the established framework for family hubs does include the needs of families going through separation, in practice, most family hubs at the moment are resourced to deal primarily with the 0 to 5 years. That's not universal, but that applies to many family hubs. So I wouldn't want to promise you that every local family hub is properly equipped to deal with separating families, but we're working on that. And there's some fantastic work being done with the Department for Education in looking at a new framework for the enormous rollout of family hubs that's now going to be in every local authority. So we've worked hard to make sure that the needs of separating families and the times of transition in a child's life, which of course separation is, are included in the areas to be met by the services in family hubs. But I would say it's work in progress at the moment. But by all means, reach out to your local family hubs and offer links into the local services, because many of them don't have any training or resources so far.
That's helpful, thank you. Finally, James, how can people reach you at the Parents Promise if they want to get in touch about working together?
Oh, that's very kind. So probably the best way, I think there's an info at the Parents Promise. The best thing, if on LinkedIn, James Hayhurst, probably the best way is connect. A few people have connected. Thank you during the webinar. Probably the best thing. Always help. Yeah, always looking for helpers and support. So we're pretty live on all the main social media channels. I can't say I do that, but somebody does it for us. But yes, drop us a line on LinkedIn, or there's an info at Parents Promise on the websites too.
Lovely, thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of our questions, Helen.
Okay, I see there's one about would the Parents Promise come to present to a group of school representatives if set up? And you may not get James, he's the head honcho, but James has quite a wide group of people who have supported him in this endeavour. And so probably one of the others might be willing or able to come. But I think we're all very keen to spread these resources far and wide.
Yeah, and the other thing we are going to do is do a big sort of educational webinar later in the year. We're trying to quite a lot of the unions got behind us, and I don't know if any of you saw the emails from, I can't remember which ones sent this in their newsletters, but I think we're going to try and do in a few months like a wider cascade, an open webinar. So when we know where that is, we can let people know if they want to leave their names.
Can I add one other thing, which is for any schools or anybody involved with schools on here? If you have any feedback from introducing these materials into school, I think James would really love to hear. We need to build up our awareness of, good or bad. We need that feedback, don't we?
Great, thank you. And then I just wanted to say that if there's any mediators on the calls, we'll be sending out the link to this webinar tomorrow to you, a template letter to schools so you can introduce the Parents' Promise to those to your local schools, and a link to the gov.uk website where you can search and find details of your local schools. So we're trying to put all those pieces of information together for you so you can spread the word about this initiative.
Thank you, Helen, so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, James.
Thanks, everybody, for a really helpful session. Thank you to Helena, thank you to James, and thank you to everyone for coming. Have a good evening.